Okay, I'll call the meeting dated July 31st, 2025 at 10 a.m. of the Evaluation Committee for the Affordable Housing Development on Orange Street, Vesper Lane, and Bartlett Road to order. And when I call your name from members of the Evaluation Committee, please let me know if you're here. Christy Ferrantella,
Here.
Chantal Blois Murphy, Chantal. Let's see her here. Tracy
I'm
McDonald.
here.
Thank you, Chantal. Tracy McDonald,
Here.
Leslie Snell,
Here.
Rick Sears,
Here.
Don Hill,
Here.
Bernie Husser,
Here.
Abby D. Molina,
Here.
and Brian Turbot. I am here. This meeting is being audio and videotaped for any members of the public that are here. Now, may I have a motion to accept the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Christy Ferrantella? Chantal Blois Murphy?
Aye. I don't know if you heard that. Aye.
I did now. Thank you, Chantal. Tracy McDonald,
Aye.
Leslie Snell,
Aye.
Rick Sears,
Aye.
Don Hill,
Aye.
Bernie Husser,
Aye.
Abby D. Molina,
Aye.
Brian Turbot is an aye. I'll open it up for public comments. For anything not on the published agenda, seeing as there's no members of the public in the meeting, I'll close it for public comment. And the first order on the agenda is a presentation from Affirmative Investments. As the committee may remember, after the first review, we did ask Affirmative Investments, to put together a brief overview and presentation with specific focus on their proposal number 2. And I will turn it over to Craig and his team for that brief presentation, which we will be able to ask questions. And then once that's done, and our questions, anybody's had an opportunity to ask questions, we will then dive into the evaluation of proposal 2. Does anybody in the committee have any questions before we proceed?
No.
Okay. Craig, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for you and your team being here and participating today.
Thank you, Brian. I'm actually going to hand it over to David Ennis to kick this off.
Thanks, Craig. Brian, could people introduce themselves who are on the evaluation committee? Just so
Actually, however you want to do that, that's
that would
absolutely.
be help. I think it would be helpful to us if that's okay.
Okay, so you want us to okay, so I am sure, David. I'm Brian Turbot. I'm the Director of Municipal Finance, and I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the town.
Okay.
Christy Ferrantella.
And your role, Christy, just so we get everybody to give like their role in the town or the government or whichever.
So I'm the housing director for the town.
Hi, I'm Leslie Snell. I'm the Director of Planning.
I'm
Tracy.
Go ahead,
Go
Tracy.
ahead. Go ahead, Rick. No, you go first.
Hi, I'm Rick Sears, and I'm the Deputy Town Manager.
Tracy McDonald. I'm the Real Estate Manager.
Craig, I'm Abby De Molina. I am the chair of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission, and I'm also I'm appointed to the Affordable Housing Trust as a member.
Okay.
I'm Chantal Blois Murphy. I'm here as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
I'm Bernie Husser. I'm the financial consultant to the town and a rehabilitated tax credit syndicator.
I'm Don Hill. I'm chair of the select board.
Is that everybody? Thank you. So I'm David Ennis. I'm president of Affirmative Investments. And I'm going to do just a brief overview and then turn it over to Virginia. Is that where I'm going, Virginia?
Yep.
Okay. So Affirmative was created in 1983 as a social investment banking firm. The idea was we were going to raise capital for projects that people felt made a change in communities, such as housing, energy, different kinds of things. So we were on the capital side of things for the first 10 years or so. And then when the low-income housing tax credit came into being at the end of the 80s, I wasn't actually there, but created a fund, a $25 million fund to raise capital to invest with nonprofits, which we did. And then there was a recession in New England in the early 90s, and things sort of changed. And we sort of flipped sides and moved to the project side. Rather than raising capital, we worked with nonprofits to help them raise equity, to help them raise debt. And then we became development consultants. I mean, of course, we knew what it took to put a deal together. So we sort of became more and more advisors to our nonprofit clients. And then we became partners with our nonprofit clients. We developed a series of partnerships. Some, I mean, as far away as Las Vegas, but we worked in Pittsburgh. We've worked in multiple communities, Cambridge, Manchester, Belmont, Falmouth. In Falmouth, we've developed a relationship with a nonprofit there, and we've developed 7 projects together, 4 of which are low-income housing tax credit projects. And then recently, we've been working on Martha's Vineyard with Island Housing Trust, doing projects that are really town-inspired. I mean, one's in Edgartown, one's in Oak Bluffs. We have 40 units in Edgartown that are in construction and will come online later this year. And then we just did a groundbreaking in Oak Bluffs for a 60-unit project, which is a combination of affordable and workforce housing. So our history is basically working with communities and within communities and in partnership with community groups. I mean, we want to work where people are interested in doing affordable housing. We don't want to be fighting communities. We want to be working with communities. And that's why one of the reasons we're so interested in this project is because you obviously perceive the needs on your island, and we think we're very hopeful that we can help you do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Virginia to walk through what we've done with our architects on design.
Thanks, David. Nice to see everyone again. So I'm going to walk through the design concepts. As you said, it's worth noting we submitted 2 proposals, but the designs are the same for both of them. So anything I say goes for both. So starting off with Orange Street, this is the site plan. On Orange Street, we fit 28 units in these 4 buildings, including 12 one-bedrooms, 12 two-bedrooms, and 4 three-bedroom units, and 28 parking spaces. And we know through the RFP that the site can technically permit more. And we're definitely committed to maximizing affordable housing, but we also really try and be sensitive to the site. And we thought that this balance really creates enough housing on the site without overdeveloping it and without underparking it. We have 28 parking spots for a 1-to-1 ratio, which we feel is enough given how walkable this site is to community amenities like grocery stores, and also due to the creation of a new bus shelter and pull-off, which you can see in between buildings 3 and 4 here. The site plan really hinges around protecting and preserving this central tulip poplar tree, I believe it is. So the buildings are kind of pushed out to the side to create a community that looks inward to that. And in terms of site circulation, cars would exit and enter on Dave Street, and emergency vehicles could exit through, I believe this is called Bayberry Court, and potentially pending negotiations with the tenant at 137A, that could be used as exit-only traffic too. Diving into a rendering of Orange Street, this is as if you're standing on the corner of the 141 parcel. So you can see a couple things we want to highlight is that we've really tried to keep smaller buildings closer to the street to minimize the sense of scale while still hitting density. And we've also taken real care to fit into the vernacular Nantucket architecture with weathered shingles, white trim, and these classic gable roof forms. So the largest building is building 1 in the back here, and you can see it's pretty obscured through the street. We've also added new sidewalk all along to boost the pedestrian friendly nature of the site. And we also have this bus shelter you can see here, and there would be a pull off, though this rendering doesn't show it as well. This is kind of zooming into the site a little bit more, so you can see that central tree saved in the middle here, and really the importance of landscaping and green space on this site. This building 12 in the back has an elevator. It's the largest of the buildings. It also has a management office that will serve this site and the Bartlett Road site, as well as climate controlled storage for all the tenants on this site in the basement, and a shared mailroom. And all of that is accessible by stairs or by elevator. Jumping into Bartlett Road. Bartlett Road, we fit 12 units in 8 one-beds and 4 two-bedroom units. And the parking is really concealed in between the 2 buildings to keep it away from the street and away from the neighbors. Cars will enter and exit off of Bartlett Road using this driveway, and emergency vehicles can exit through reinforced turf here. So it looks like grass, but it's structurally sound enough that those vehicles can go over it. And we've met the parking requirements here. Jumping into a rendering. Here you can see it from looking across the street. Again, we've done a similar strategy to Orange Street by really placing the smaller buildings out front to keep at the neighborhood scale. And the larger building is in the back, and it's also situated on the site such that its smallest facade is facing the street. And again, similar materials on all the buildings. And then this is kind of standing on that nice south-facing lawn in the back. So here you can see the larger building and the 2 smaller buildings on the street. So this creates a really lovely central lawn and gathering space, and also serves to buffer the buildings from the neighbors a bit. So this larger building in the back also has a basement with climate controlled storage and an elevator. And the tenants here would share the management office on Orange Street, as I said. And finally, Vesper Lane. Vesper Lane would be our senior only community. We have 17 units of senior housing here, 15 one-beds and 2 two-bedrooms. And we really have tried to use this site to create an enclosed community. And one thing I really want to highlight with that is this circular walking path, if you can see my mouse, that goes all around the site to encourage the seniors to move around and visit each other, and also to be able to spend time outside regardless of their mobility. So all the units on this site are designed with universal design and are accessible from a single floor. This building 1 is 2 stories but has an elevator, and buildings 2 and 3 are both single story. Parking is fairly straightforward to pull in and out of, which is really important for senior populations. And then we also have another reinforced turf section over here for emergency vehicles. Here's a view of the site when you're just pulling into the driveway. One thing I'll call out here, you can see solar panels here. We actually have designed solar panels into many of the buildings across the sites, but this rendering shows it best. And that really speaks to how we try and be as sustainable as possible when we're designing these buildings without being cost prohibitive. And solar is a strategy we've done on a lot of our recent buildings and have seen a lot of success with. And again, you can see a larger building in the middle, but it's flanked by 2 smaller buildings to really limit that impact to the neighbors. And finally, this looks at the site from back behind it. So you can see that circular walking path in action here too. And really the green space and community space that's created here, as well as these trees that would screen it off from the neighbors. So with that, I'll turn it to Tara to talk about numbers.
Great. Thanks, Virginia, and nice to see everyone again. So I'm going to talk fairly big picture through kind of the numbers and timeline, and then we thought it would probably be better to answer questions about specifics, because I know sometimes with numbers people kind of glaze over and get a little lost. So I'll kind of give you a big picture, and I thought it would be helpful to compare the LIHTC to our workforce proposal. The workforce proposal, as a reminder, was kind of our main proposal, which we think responded to the need you laid out in the RFP. And the LIHTC was a bit of an add-on to kind of show you, we figured people might ask, the community might ask, well, why are we not looking at LIHTC? And so we thought we would show you an alternative proposal. So the main differences between the two are the population that's served. So workforce, majority of our units are higher income, 80 to 120% of AMI. And the LIHTC, it says majority are below 80, with the majority of actually are also really below 60% AMI. And I'll get into who that really means in a minute. The timeline is important. The workforce units, that really the 2 buildings, Orange and Bartlett, could move ahead a lot quicker. In the workforce proposal, we've pulled apart Vesper. Vesper will be a low-income housing tax credit project, the senior project. The first two will not be LIHTC projects. So we could move those two projects ahead quicker, starting about a year and a half earlier than the LIHTC full project. We would finish, I'll talk a little bit actually about timeline more at the end. The town contribution is about a $7 million difference between the workforce and the LIHTC. The development costs are roughly the same. You'll see the workforce is a little bit more expensive, largely due to that we will have two separate contracts, two mobilizations of the contractor. The contractor will first mobilize for Orange and Bartlett, and then we'll have to separately mobilize for Vesper. And just in general, there are more public resources for the lower income units, and there's lots of them. So they're all layered on. It gets a little bit more restrictive, and more oversight from the many different sources. We have less groups of money on the workforce side. So the next two slides really talk about kind of who these different projects are serving. So this is just a visual to show you that the darker, the navy is the LIHTC project units and how they're spread across the different income levels, and the light blue is the workforce. And you'll just see that the dark blue is weighted more towards lower income units, and the blue towards the higher. And you might say, well, who are these people? You know, kind of what do these AMI levels mean for most people? And so the research we had found is the average town employee, this was 2 years ago data, makes about $58,000 a year. You probably all read the New York Times article a couple of weeks ago that also highlighted someone from the DPW, and she was making about $65,000. So if we just took her as an example, she's right really at that 60% AMI limit. She could quickly be over that. So that's kind of your typical highest income person that would be in a typical low income housing tax credit project. It seems like a couple of years ago, the average teacher and police salary were closer to a 95,000. So they fall in between that 80 and 100% AMI limit. Now we'll just go into the comparison big picture of sources. You'll notice that the sources are, the types are very similar of the sources that we're using. It's really just the amounts, and that's where kind of the politics and time frame kind of come in. So obviously we can support a much larger mortgage on the workforce units because we have higher rents, so we can support that. On the low-income housing tax credit, you know, on the workforce, it's really just Vesper that we're using tax credits for, both the federal and the state low-income housing tax credit. And you'll see it's a much bigger request on those resources for the low-income housing tax credit project only. And then the money that we're asking for from the state is Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities, EOHLC. On the workforce side, a little more than half of that is going towards Vesper. We have about 2 million of that being requested for the workforce units, which we think, given the small amount coming from the state for that, we can work with the state to, you know, squeeze that in either out of the big funding round and into one of their smaller rounds. And I'll talk about that in a second in another slide. So it's a fairly low ask from the state, which will allow us to move quicker on Bartlett and Orange if we were to choose the workforce path. And then we have workforce housing money for mass housing on both. I think one of the follow-up questions to us was, do they have this money? And they have been awarded additional money. It is not in their hands yet, but the expectation is by the time we are requesting those funds that those will be in their kitty at that point. We talked about Nantucket's funds, and then the last is the workforce project generates a higher developer fee and overhead, so we're putting more of that back. That's why that number is a little bit higher. So next, uses, again, pretty similar. We're building the same buildings as Virginia mentioned. The main difference in the hard costs, you'll see it's higher. Again, that mostly is due to 2 mobilizations of the contractor. The soft cost side is a little bit higher on the low-income housing tax credit side, largely because we're using bonds, which are fairly expensive to close into a deal. And we have more funds that come in later in the project. So on the workforce side, we presume the town money can come in a bit sooner. And so we don't have to borrow as much money as we would on the LIHTC side, which we would incur interest on. The reserves, oh, sorry, just one sec. Reserves on the workforce are a little bit higher just because we have a higher first mortgage. So we need to reserve higher amounts of debt, of the debt service costs there. And as I mentioned, the developer fee before is a little bit higher. And so lastly, before we kind of open up to questions, I just want to talk about the time frame of both of those again. So entitlements we had starting in August, that's probably going to get pushed a little if we were to get awarded the project, and we would probably start that more in September. And then the funding round, so the state, a lot of this on the soft funds is determined by the state's funding round. And they have one major funding round a year, which is a pre-application that's due in November usually, and then a full application that's due in February. So really by November, you have to have a pretty good sense of your project. You have to have started your zoning. And by February, they want your zoning complete. And so I think in our original proposal to you, we thought it's possible to maybe squeeze our way into the next winter round with a week application. And what this means is sometimes you submit in their February round knowing that they won't fund you because there's a separate, what they call mini round in the summer that typically is only open to those who have already applied in that February round. So originally we thought maybe we can squeeze into the 2026 funding round in February. We're willing to talk with you and see how we might be able to do that. But for purposes of ours now, we're being more conservative and showing that we would need to submit in the February 2027 round. And that would be both for Vesper on the workforce plan, as well as all of the buildings on the LIHTC plan. And so I think I kind of talked a little bit about the time frame for construction on the workforce. We could start around February of 2027 after we finished with all entitlements and worked on all of the funding. And those two buildings, Orange and Bartlett, would be finished around spring of 2028, at which point we would start on Vesper. And then on the all LIHTC project, again, if we were to win in the February 2027 round, we would start construction June of 2028. So happy to talk about all of these in more detail and answer any of your questions. We're really excited that you wanted to talk to us again. So we'll open it up back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Tara. I'll open it up to everyone on the committee if they have any questions that they would like to have addressed or like to see answered from that presentation, including anything you've seen in the proposal that they submitted as well, I think. So anybody on the committee is, whoever has any, please feel free to ask. I'd be surprised if Bernie didn't have a couple.
I think Bernie's frozen. I'm sure you're right. He probably does have comments.
So while he's frozen, I'll ask one question. So is there a way to break out one location for LIHTC? Like, for instance, could we just completely break out the LIHTC for the senior, for the Vesper location? Or does it have to stay all as a group for funding?
No, if I'm understanding you, so on the workforce column project, the proposal is to actually do two separate projects that are really not connected to each other. Vesper would be its own closing, its own financing structure. It would probably have a separate LLC owner. It would have a separate LLC ownership, and the other two would be together.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought it was, but I wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie, do you have any questions for us?
I'm,
Go ahead. Did
yeah,
somebody else have a
I'm
question?
really sorry. I don't know what happened with my internet. It froze, and Brian, everything that came through from you unfortunately was garbled, and I missed a little bit of whatever happened as soon as Tara had stopped.
So we opened it
dealing
up for
with.
questions, Bernie, and I said I would be
Okay.
surprised if you didn't have a couple.
I
And
missed
then you
that.
froze.
And yeah, okay, well, at least the freezing that I saw was the same freezing, because you would have seen a baffled look on my face, and I never like to be frozen though, because it's probably catching me at a bad at a bad time. Um, so I you know in terms of questions, and maybe start with just a couple of comments. And I understand, the time frame here, and I think, laid this all out. So that's that's just the reality. And the other reality for us, for all of us, is that it's a tough environment to get affordable housing financed. Lots of demands. None of this is new or surprising. Lots of demands on the limited resource. A lot of things happen at the federal level that we're not quite sure yet, what's happening. And Nantucket is an expensive location. So it puts a lot of stress on the developer to pull it together, the funders to find the resources, and that gap has fallen on with respect to closing that gap, has fallen on the town in a really significant manner. And so, of course, with the timing for these to happen, it opens up that much more uncertainty. I know Brian, I think, had sent us an update on the numbers with some more detail to the operating budgets and pro formas and expectations over time. And, we looked at it, Brian forwarded on to me, and I looked at it. And one of the things I noticed is that the cash flow over time, the NOI on a percentage basis, NOI was starting to trend down, and cash flow was trending down. I think NOI itself was actually trending down. So debt service, of course, is held steady, and cash starts to the net cash afterwards starts to get reduced. And I looked at it pretty quickly, but that's what I saw. And so the town is in that position with this deeply subordinated loan, um, of seeing the opportunity to get the money back, because the town has to go and borrow the money. Town doesn't have, a bunch of federal money or state money flowing through it that it can just turn around and give to the deal. Town's going to have to go to the market, borrow the money, and then wait for the repayment. So it's a real stress on town resources with respect to that. So I didn't know if any of you, had any ideas on the affirmative side, if you had any ideas, any thoughts about that, anything that you've seen in some of your other deals that has sort of helped with that situation, because it's starting off with an $11.8 million investment by the town for 64 units. So just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I just want to understand your questions exactly.
Yeah,
So
sorry. There's kind of one question there, and I apologize for all the stuff leading into it. So
no,
I might have
it's okay.
lost it.
I'm trying to understand if we've missed something about maybe the intentions of the town, which maybe we did or didn't, or if you are referring to, so on these, if we're just looking at the solely low-income housing tax credit project for a second,
Yes.
when the state, so for everyone else, you might know this, you might not, when the state and localities give money into a project, typically the state and the locality share a portion of the cash flow. It's typically like pari passu of how much they're each giving into the project. And so, Bernie, is that what you're asking about? Is that share of cash flow that would flow out of the project?
It's not so much, what's that going to end up being,
Yep.
because I understand that. And, we've dealt with this on the Tacoma Green, or are dealing with this on the Tacoma Green project, which is, which is moving ahead of you in time. And we've gotten some changes to that because of the town's position and because of agreements that were reached with the developer and this same sort of issue. So, but nonetheless, yeah, the cash flow, whatever's there, does have to get at certain point in time spread out between the other subordinated and soft lenders. What I was really kind of pointing out to with respect to it and asking if there's anything else that you've seen or any other ways to skin this cat with the cash flow, net cash flow after debt service trending down over time. Is there anything else there in either in your numbers that you've looked at that you see or what you've seen in other projects where there's some way to make that look a little better or to deal with it in a way so the town can look at that and understand how long it's going to take for it to get this money back.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't know the trending that we have on
Yeah.
them. But I think we normally do it for projections when we're going to funding sources. We show negative trending, meaning that our expenses increase faster than our revenues, which, I mean, that's the way investors want to see it. But that's not always the case. I mean, we have projects where the NOI is increasing. I mean, we have other projects where that's not the case. So, but I'm just saying you're looking at projections with a certain assumptions built into it that are negative. So
Yeah, and I understand that trending is usually 2% on rents and 3% on expenses, but it doesn't necessarily, every deal is different, and we each know that. Doesn't necessarily mean that the net number, the actual cash flow number will trend down. It usually does in a small deal. It's just not a lot of
Right.
revenue, versus the expenses, or a deal that's got doesn't have a big mortgage, maybe is deeply skewed income-wise, so that 3% increase on the revenues versus the 2% on the expenses isn't greater than that expense increase. Bigger deals, a bigger deal like this, like Tacoma Green, we have an increasing NOI, still using the 2 and 3% trending.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
actually,
is, every deal's different and it runs on the assumptions. And I know I don't want to get too already gotten pretty into the weeds with this on this, one issue. So it may be the sort of thing to just, looking at that and understanding that the town's perspective, of course, and town's well aware of the difficulties it has to get affordable housing built in the town and how expensive it is. It's just trying to figure out, potentially different ways that we might work with you in the future on as this evolves to try and change that that structure, that narrative to allow the town to get some of that funding back so it can use it for the next deal. Anyway.
Yeah, I will say that the trending on the workforce model is significantly better. Where obviously, especially at Orange and Bartlett, you're looking at higher rents to begin with. So even though we're doing negative trending, because those rents are so much higher, you actually do get positive trending for the first 20 years on the debt service coverage ratio and net cash flow.
Yeah, and that's the downside, I guess, of doing having those tax credit rents, more tax credit rents in there. You get more capital upfront because of the tax credit benefit, the equity, but the negative is that the revenue or the net revenue trends down over time.
Yeah, Bernie,
and you
to think about is that I think Affirmative knows too, but Hilltop Securities is also doing, Josh, that we've dealt with on most, if not all, affordable housing projects that we're working on that are looking for or asking for some assistance. He's actually looking at that, and that will be part of the ultimate decision that the evaluation committee makes as a whole will be he'll have an analysis for that to be able to make a recommendation. I know that I think at the last meeting we kind of leaned towards proposal 2, partially I think because of the delta in the funding, but ultimately Hilltop will provide an analysis as well, which we'll all be able to have a discussion on which proposal to recommend, if we choose to recommend a proposal. I don't want to make an assumption that that'll happen, but to the Affordable Housing Trust, and then ultimately they'll vote on that recommendation, and then we would proceed with discussions, much like we have in all the other ones, with whoever whatever proposal was recommended to be the one to be accepted, should the Affordable Housing Trust do that. But it is a good question because, one of the evaluative criteria in this is affirmative no's is, the amount of funding that's being requested from the town. So it is good to have a little bit of an understanding. And I think in the LIHTC deal, Craig or Tara, whoever, am I right in I'm reading this, the 20-year projection looks like we recoup about 605,000 of the 11 million in the first 20 years. Is that about right? If I'm reading all of this financial stuff correctly?
I know I did that calculation, didn't I? And sent it to you. I just have to find.
While Craig's finding it, I just had one other thought, which actually does affect our cash flow significantly. I don't know if it will be the same for Nantucket, but on our Cape projects, and our Falmouth project specifically, they cash flow much better than the projections. In large part because we have a lot of mobile Section 8s that are used that we don't use to underwrite. We can't underwrite a mobile Section 8, but we have a huge amount of revenue that comes from people who have these mobile vouchers and are living in our projects. And so that's been incredibly helpful. So while we can't use it to underwrite, it may be something that Hilltop wants to look at to just as a sensitivity to see how much more could come out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to the affirmative group and really to the evaluation committee too, the reason that we have to have Hilltop analyze this is because the majority of the money that we would be putting up, if we do get to that point, would be borrowed funds, and our bond counsel, which is Troutman something or other, they've merged and have a really long name now. They require an analysis by our financial advisors to opine on what we actually have the ability to finance on any given project, because it is borrowed money, and we have to meet certain we have to meet certain provisions of the statutes for a public purpose. So that's why we have them involved in this, and that's why they review it to give us that opinion on the viability of the project and what they believe, based on the criteria, we're actually allowed to utilize in public funds. So I wish it was easier for us to be able to to help participate in these, but there's a lot of guardrails that get put on it because it's public dollars. So, does anyone else have any questions? Anything else? I know we kind of went into the financial weeds of it, but which I think is a good discussion. But is there anybody else that has any questions around the buildings, the proposed units, or anything of that nature?
Brian, it's Rick. Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
And coming from somebody pretty uninformed on these things, the difference between proposal 1 and 2, does the construction, is the delta as a result of the passage of time and increased construction costs, or do we just have one set of construction costs and we're using it irrespective of whether the start date is T0 or 18 months later, as the second proposal suggests? So are we
understood?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. There is some escalation because it'll start later. It's not hugely later, but there's also an expanded time that they will be committing resources on the general condition side. So longer use of a trailer, longer use of the project manager and the site supervisor. So that actually is probably the larger portion of the increase from by having it in the workforce model, where it's really 2 separate projects, 2 very separate mobilizations.
But I do think that the main difference is that there's a lot of public money for low-income housing. There's less money for workforce housing. So we have to borrow more, and we're asking more from the town to do the workforce. I mean, it's the public resources that allow us to build a capital stack with less money from the town.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I'm trying to figure out which one
Yeah,
it is.
it's more that than the construction side.
Yeah. Unfortunately, workforce housing, which a lot of folks, want a spectrum of incomes and want to also help, more what would be considered middle income, families and that type of a thing. Unfortunately, the resources to do that, just as David said, just aren't sufficient enough. So what you end up with, depending on how, any one particular deal is market rate housing, of course, if you can get it built and done, and if it's at the high enough level, is the best economic result, more cash flow, that type of thing. Tax credits works sort of second best because of the large capital subsidy to offset those lower incomes. And unfortunately, workforce housing is the one that has that biggest gap in terms of financing. It creates the bigger gap, and that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I would also add that operating affordable housing, the management costs are significantly higher. There's a lot of reviews, a lot of inspections, a lot of paperwork, recertifications, things of that nature that really drive up some of the operating costs on an affordable, even a workforce, but much more considerate, much higher than a market rate development would have.
Right. Mm-hmm. Good point.
I couldn't hear you, Christy, if you were asking something.
If no one else has any other questions, then I think that I'm going to make the recommendation to the group that we dive right into the evaluation. I'll kind of lay out the way that I envision this, which I had previously chatted with Christy about, is to do this evaluation. I know originally, I think that the last meeting we thought we were leaning towards proposal 2. So I think we need to do this evaluation, and then we can have a discussion about this as we go through the evaluation. And then I think we would need one meeting to compare the two and ultimately score an aggregate for whichever we're going to recommend and make a recommendation to the Affordable Housing Trust, which my office will write up a document making the recommendation of the committee. One thing I think we're going to need to do, and hopefully affirmative will be amenable to this, is my office will probably need to send you a letter requesting your approval to extend the time to make a recommendation to the trust in the award, because I think we're either getting very close to it or we may have slightly passed it. So I'm hoping you would be amenable to agreeing to that extension. Otherwise, we have a problem and continuing. So that letter will be forthcoming just to make sure that we have everything in line. So
I don't see that being a problem, Brian.
okay, thank you. I just want to make sure, because we just want to make sure that we're documenting everything as we go. Christy?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I just had a few comments and a question. One about workforce housing versus low-income housing and seeing the comparison between the two. In terms of the need on the island, I think that we're going to see Tacoma Green coming online shortly, and that's 64 units. LIHTC that's mainly serving 30 and 60% AMI. So I like the idea of the workforce housing that's serving kind of a market that we don't have here. In terms of timeline, we have really been looking at these projects as helping us stay in safe harbor. So I tend to favor a proposal that is starting sooner rather than later. But understanding that in the process of going through, kind of my last question is, Nantucket neighbors are very active and involved, and especially in affordable housing. And I'm just wondering, what is your strategy for community engagement, and how have you done this on the Cape or Martha's Vineyard, where you can keep projects moving along as they're going through the approval process? And if you could just touch on your experience on that.
Sure. Do you want to talk,
I
Tara?
would say, why don't you, well, yours have been more recent. You want to talk about the vineyard, and then I can talk about Falmouth?
Sure. So in general, the idea is that you reach out early and you reach out often, and you provide ample time for people to see what you're doing, to see how you've addressed their concerns, to see what the next step is, and you keep just an open line of communication, whether that's, people who've signed up to receive emails, whether it's a website, just depends on how we want to set that up. But, typically there's a process where we start with kind of an introductory, here we are, these are the sites, these are what we're thinking, get their feedback, then a follow-up meeting like, okay, we heard you, this is what we've come up with, get more feedback from that, possibly a third meeting after that to, again, do another iteration, and then ultimately a meeting, which is, I kind of view it as more like an open house, where we have we'll have the landscape architect there, and we'll have the green consultant there, and the actual architect, and us, and the various pieces, so that, if one group wants to talk about sustainable, native plants and how that's going to interact in open space, they can focus with the landscape architect and really go there. If someone's really concerned about traffic, we'll have the traffic engineer there to really talk about what the pros and cons are and the impacts would be. And that way, it's just, again, it's really just a way to make sure that there isn't everybody has an opportunity to go in deep with the area that they're most concerned about. And ideally, they understand that, we're trying to move it forward. We're trying to make sure that it's good for everybody, but, there is no perfect development. Like, what we would love to have to make it as easy and quick as possible is not what the neighbors in the town would want to have. What they would want to have to make sure that it is perfect on their end might not be feasible on ours. So everyone will be slightly disappointed and ideally mostly happy.
Working on the vineyard has been sort of an interesting experience. It's actually been some of the easiest neighbor relations we've ever had. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that there's really a perceived community need for this housing. I mean, the people next door are not going to be happy about the height, the cars, but when the community is behind the project, it's their voices we hear their voices, but they tend to accept the community's wishes. That's our experience.
Yeah, I would say that at our Edgartown project, and I would not expect this to happen anywhere else because it didn't happen in Edgartown either, but our 40B hearing with the zoning board lasted an entire hour. Start, open, review, recommendation, finish, approve. 1 hour.
It didn't happen in
again,
OB.
that's because the town was so supportive of it, had done so much work behind the scenes before we ever got involved, that the community knew it was going forward.
So I just want to add one thing. I think what's unique about this one and a little different, and I think we really want to use the municipality to help us, help us craft a good plan, right? Our success is your success, the same thing. What's different is there's 3 different project sites, which means there's 3 different neighborhoods, which means they all might have different concerns, right? So I think we really have to look at these as 3 separate projects, and whether that means they are separate community meetings or they're together. I don't have the answer to that yet, but I think we have to acknowledge that they are 3 distinct permitting pieces, and create our plan carefully because of that.
Thank you.
That's a really good point, Tara.
Thanks, David.
I have one more question, and if I may, Brian, is that all right? And it's probably for the town team. So I'm just trying to think about when we go into the evaluation process here. It feels to me like we have 2 different, we have 2 different proposals, but evaluating, I don't know how to evaluate these 2 without understanding what the trust wants to accomplish. So Christy, your comment before was quite helpful or useful for me, which is, what is it that we're looking to do? Are we looking for the lower income housing, or are we looking for workforce housing? What's the full plan that says at this point in time, based on what we know we have in the pipeline, is the best outcome for us? Do we need more lower income housing? Do we need more workforce housing? So I like, they feel to me like they don't ever intersect. There's not some place where we can kind of say this works both ways. So I don't know. I guess I would think we'd need some guidance from the trust about what is the most important thing that we're looking at here, and then evaluate proposal 2 on that basis, or proposal 1 on that basis. I find this to be a little hard without knowing what the strategic plan for building workforce or affordable housing on the island is relative to these 2 proposals.
So I'm going to offer a little bit of an observation on how to do this, and then Abby, I'll go to you because I know your hand was up first, and then Tracy, okay? I think the first thing that we do is evaluate proposal 2 based on the evaluative criteria today, okay? So that we get everybody's ranking, we get everybody's understanding of that. I think that Christy can have a discussion with the trust about what their, I don't want to say preferred route, but what their thoughts are, and can bring it back in the ultimate recommendation meeting, hopefully in the next 7 to 10 days, would have the comparison of the 2 with the input from the trust on kind of what they're thinking. And then we use that information in ultimately coming to a recommendation on the 2 proposals, right? I think we have to evaluate this proposal only on the merits within the RFP right now, because that's what the evaluative criteria are on. But as a group ranking and recommendation, I think an understanding of, is the desire for workforce housing greater than a all LIHTC project with all limits between 60 and 80 AMI with some market rate or 100 or 120 in there. But I think the first thing we do, Rick, is to evaluate this on the criteria and take that into account when we're comparing the 2 proposals against each other to finalize the recommendation to go to the trust, is the way that I would suggest we do this, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm happy to hear Abby's, the rest of the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick and Brian. I think that is the right way to go. But I think, Rick, to your point, we have, as the trust, had many discussions about this. And I think Christy did touch upon it, where I think one of the things that we have lately been talking about a lot more at the trust is the prioritization of workforce housing in general. And so I'm not saying this just for this project or whatever, but I think that we have been feeling like that's something that is a really important need for the trust to work with. But I think, Brian's approach is the right thing, is we evaluate it based on the criteria, but within the trust, we will have that discussion, but we do constantly have those discussions. And, that is something that we go back and forth on, is the need really, as we pointed out, between the 60 and 80%, or the kind of higher groups. And I think that what we've been seeing is that we need more units addressing the higher tiers because of the way the projects that we've gotten and that have been approved are really already addressing more of the less than 80%. But that's just my 2 cents. I'm just one trust member, but I do think it is something that we do kind of constantly discuss when we're talking about these projects at the trust. And when this comes up, obviously will be a big part of our discussion.
Tracy? We can't hear you, Tracy. Still can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm unmuted.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So I was going to piggyback on Christie's comments about Tacoma Green and those 64 units coming online and being LIHTC, and that I do feel like the workforce does meet a different, the different need that we do need, and that it might be worth the trade-off. I have some concerns surrounding local preference, and not just that it's workforce, but also local preference. And if people were going to lean to the LIHTC, I would still want that to be local preference.
Okay. Bernie?
So I will lower my hand. So I just want to say a couple things with that, because I think this is a really great discussion, and it's probably helpful. They may be a little bored for the affirmative folks, but it's probably really helpful for them to hear some of these issues. And this is the sort of thing we do need to talk about in terms of going forward for the town. So Tacoma Green, just to clarify some of the things, Tacoma Green 64 units, and I misspoke earlier about 64 units here, but Tacoma Green 64 units. And I think the numbers, 28 of them are workforce housing. 27 are LIHTC. So less than half of them are LIHTC, just to clarify. And even though we think of it as a LIHTC project, this project, Orange and the rest of them, is a LIHTC project also, even though not all the units are LIHTC. So, and then there's 9 market rate units. So it is a very different project. And so it's a combination of a lot of workforce units. That's the highest number of units, almost the same number of LIHTC, and then some market rate units. Here we are comparing two different programs, and the second one, the more recent one, is much more LIHTC, but it's not just 100% LIHTC and no workforce. It has workforce housing in it. There's just using a mixed income approach and an income averaging approach at the state. And won't say too much more about that. That's a bunch of details of things. So I think there is ability to do an analysis. I can certainly do it to say, based on these numbers here, if the desire is for more workforce units, if that's the desire, the goal, that's where we want to go, there's going to be a cost to it. And that's okay. I mean, if everybody says that's okay, we just want to know what it is, and we should know what it is. And we could do that sort of thing and say, if it's a LIHTC, if you're moving a unit from, to up into that workforce category and not being LIHTC, that's going to cost an additional X amount of dollars per unit. And it's going to be an estimate, and it's going to be based on the current numbers and all that type of thing. But at least it will help everybody here on the committee to understand a little bit about that, if that sounds reasonable.
It does. So if there's no other questions from any members of the group, I think the best thing, or my recommendation, is we jump right into the evaluation piece, and let's try to get that done in the next 50 or 55 minutes and discuss or kind of map out the next steps after we get through that. So if that's okay with everybody, unless anybody has any objections, the first evaluative criteria is that the Orange Street, Vesper Lane, and Bartlett Road bundle demonstrates the proposer demonstrates the capacity to develop the parcels at Orange, Vesper Lane, and Bartlett Road, and that the proposal submitted includes plans for all 3 parcels. So I'm going to start with you, Bernie, since you're right in center view, on how you rated this, and a comment for the rating, please.
Okay. So I rated this as a pass.
Yeah.
I said highly advantageous, and my explanation was that they did propose to develop all of the sites in the RFP. They would demonstrate a track record, the capacity, experience to do this. That was it.
Okay. I'm just going to go in the order that I see everybody on the right-hand side of the screen. So Abby DiMolina. Okay, well, while we wait for Abby, I'll move to Dawn.
Pass and
Okay.
highly advantageous.
Okay, so for purposes of this, we don't have to say whether it passes or fails. We just have to make the comment on what we rank it in there, because if we're ranking it, we assume that it passes. So just to make this a little easier. Just a note, Don, we do have to make a slight comment on why we gave it that ranking. That is part of the requirements to do, but, so,
Same as Bernie said.
okay, that's fine. What I got next? Christie?
I rated it highly advantageous and the developer has proposed developing all 3 sites.
Okay. Leslie?
I also gave it highly advantageous. Comparable projects completed by the proposer indicated that they have the ability to complete the project in a cost-effective and efficient manner.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Rick?
I basically said what everybody else has said so far.
Okay, that's fine. Chantal?
Ditto.
Ditto,
It's
I
very,
like
I hate repeating what everybody said.
I know,
There we go.
it's the downfall of having to do this like this, right? Tracy?
I went highly advantageous and said that it meets all the criteria and in some areas exceeds it.
Okay, and, Abby?
Yeah, sorry, I heard you calling me. I had to put my baby down.
No, that's okay.
I also rated it highly advantageous and agree with everyone else's comments about it meeting all
Okay.
of the requirements. And as Tracy said, exceeding in a couple areas.
Okay, I had also rated it highly advantageous. I put that they submitted proposals for all 3 sites and clearly demonstrated in the proposal that they had the ability to develop all of the parcels as requested. So moving on to developer experience and capacity in parentheses team. Tracy?
Okay, I gotta find my screen here. The second part.
So developer experience and team, they have demonstrated experience in and capability for designing, permitting, developing projects.
Okay,
Outcome.
I'm there. I got it. I went with advantageous on this and said it predominantly meets the criteria.
Okay. Abby, since I see you next.
Sorry. I also rated it advantageous and said it meets the criteria.
Okay. Bernie?
Muted, Bernie.
What was that? Oh. Well, while we
Sorry.
wait for.
Sorry
Oh,
about that.
That's okay.
Have to switch between the 2 documents. So I rated it as highly advantageous. I think the development team has significant and substantial affordable housing development experience, similar scope, and focused on the energy efficiency. That's a standard approach to the design. I did have a concern with the property management. The members of the team have strong reputations and references. And of course, Housing Nantucket's island base, which is important, but it does not have the experience with a 57-unit project with the complex rules of light tech housing. And the reason I kept the highly advantageous is because I think there's ways to mitigate that. There can be consultants, there can be some support with there so they can get to that point. But I think that's the reality of it right now.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. Let's see, Dawn?
I did advantageous and my concerns were similar about housing Nantucket.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, who do I see next? Christie?
Thank you. I did advantageous as well. Affirmative investments demonstrates a high level of success in comparable projects across the state and Martha's Vineyard. They have a team with local knowledge that have been a part of other Nantucket projects, but concern about the management of a LIHTC deal and having to pay for on-site development of Housing Nantucket to manage LIHTC.
Okay, thank you. Leslie?
I gave it highly advantageous. The project team has significant educational and work experience, and the project examples appear to be of similar quality that we're seeking.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
I said advantageous, that they do meet the criteria, and I think the Housing Nantucket issue is not one to just brush under the rug.
Okay, thank you. Chantal?
I had the same concerns, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Bernie. I'm advantageous on this one because I have, just from the proposal, absolute faith in the development team, but concerns about the project, the property management arm of it. But agree that some support would help the local organization. My concern around that even is will bear the brunt of the cost of that support.
And I rated it advantageous and said that I believe that the majority of the team has the capacity and the experience. I did have some of the same concerns with the proposed property manager, primarily around managing a property of this size. I don't believe that they've had a history of managing properties of this size, but also around the complexities, as I've learned in dealing with the Tacoma Green projects around LIHTC and the intricacies of the rules in citing people in those particular units, did give me a little bit of concern, given the fact that I don't believe they have a track record of dealing with a lot of LIHTC funded projects. I do think that that affirmative proposed a way to mitigate that by working with somebody that they have worked with in the past to kind of help bring them along. But given the high profile nature of a lot of our developments, it concerns me that we are engaging somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience in this, especially in light of the large potential investment by the town. So that was my rationale. Sorry I was so long-winded, everybody. Affordability. So under this, the proposal meets the greatest level of affordability fiscally possible. Proposal meets requirements to have all units qualify in the SHI list and addresses the town's desire to provide at least 25% affordable and 10% market allocated to municipal use if approved by EOHLC. And I will start in the order I see everybody. So Rick Sears.
Don't do that. Actually, I should not go first. I don't know the answer on the 5%. Sorry.
So then we're going to start with Bernie.
So I rated this as highly advantageous. I thought the proposal met the affordable requirements of the town. Since there are no market rate units, then 10% of them don't have to be allocated in a certain way. But then the town, the RFP, it was also in accordance with the RFP and appears to me to comply with HLC guidelines as described.
Okay. Tracy?
Very advantageous. I said the units are affordable and would go on the SHI list. It meets the bedroom requirements, and I would hope that it factors in local preference.
Abby?
Sorry, I was muted. I also said highly advantageous, the same thing about the affordable units in SHI list. And I also agree with Tracy's point about the local preference. I think that's something important to keep in mind.
Let's see, Christy?
I rated it highly advantageous. They provide a high level of affordability, agree to local preference, and potentially a special local preference for municipal employees. I did note that they did include zoning waivers such as parking height and the number of 3 bedrooms that were kind of outside, but didn't take away from rating it as highly advantageous.
Okay, let's see, Chantal?
That one was highly advantageous for me because I felt like it met a lot of the the needs that the trust has been discussing around affordability in the income areas. So.
Dawn?
Highly advantageous, and I do appreciate the local preference and the potential preference for municipal employees.
Leslie?
Highly advantageous. The proposals include all income restricted units, which I thought was great.
Okay. Rick?
Based on the math working, I'm highly advantageous.
Okay. Leslie, can I just confirm that it does, because every one of them does say that the proposal meets the requirements of the zoning bylaws, so I'm assuming, I'm not a zoning expert, so, but they do in whole or in part meet the bylaws, right? Correct, the proposal
Yes.
as crafted? Okay.
It's been a while since I looked at it, but I think there may be some special permits that are required, but
Okay, other than that, there's no issue though, okay, so then I do have it highly advantageous as well, for all the reasons stated. I do appreciate the local preference, and I do appreciate the entirety of this particular proposal being income restricted, so I did rate it highly advantageous as well. Okay. This one is broken into three particular ones. Number of units and permitting at Orange Street. No more than 32 units will be constructed on the property. I'm sure we're gonna do the workforce rental housing pursuant to Nantucket zoning bylaws. So I will start with Rick.
I think it meets all
Okay.
all of the Miami.
No, I said okay.
Okay, I got it as advantageous. I think it meets all the requirements of the RFP in terms of the numbers of units and buildings.
Okay, Bernie.
I said highly advantageous. It has 28 units for Orange Street, including workforce housing, and not more than 32.
Perfect. Abby.
Same. It highly advantageous. It has it meets the requirements for units. Thank you.
Dawn.
Same.
Leslie.
the same as well.
Okay. Tracy.
It said highly advantageous, because it saves the tree, it's a good mix of unit styles, and that it's centrally located, to, grocery store, walking, biking, and buses.
Chantal.
I have it as highly advantageous and appreciate the fact that it is, the buildings are thoughtfully placed and they didn't burst at the seams with the amount of units.
Christy.
Highly advantageous for all the same comments.
And I am highly advantageous because it has 25 or more units as permitted by zoning bylaws, and I did appreciate the fact as well that they are going to save the tree. Moving on to number of units and permitting at Vesper Lane. No more than 17 units will be constructed. Affordable units for residents age 55 and above, ADA compliant pursuant to Nantucket bylaws. Christy.
Highly advantageous. The recommendation is for 17 units, which is in line with the RFP.
Chantal.
Same.
Tracy.
Same, highly advantageous, meets the criteria for unit count and thoughtful landscaping.
Leslie.
Of the same, highly advantageous, it meets the unit count and has a preference for people, residents aged 55 plus.
Perfect. Rick.
You're muted, Rick.
Having so much fun here. Highly advantageous. It meets the number of units in line with the proposal, the RFP.
Dawn.
Highly advantageous.
Thank you. Bernie,
I said highly advantageous. It has the 17 number of units, age 55 and above. I don't believe that age 55 is a senior. But it's ADA compliant.
Abby,
Same as everyone, highly advantageous, has the amount of units 17 and also the appropriate landscaping for the 55 plus community, which Bernie, if you're over 50, you can be in the AARP, so
I do have an AARP membership.
yeah, so for what it's worth,
Yes.
I had it rated highly advantageous as well. I thought the proposal was thoughtfully done for the number of units, and was happy to see that they did meet the requirements of the proposal for residents age 55 and above, and complied with the zoning bylaws as well. Let's see, number of units and permitting at Bartlett Road. No more than 12 units will be constructed on the property. Rental development pursuant to Nantucket zoning bylaw. Christie,
Highly advantageous. The proposal is for 12 units, which is in line with the RFP.
Tracy,
Fairly advantageous. The criteria meets a single family smaller scale, attractive landscaping, a great unit mix, and meets zoning.
Rick,
Highly advantageous, meets the numbers and meets the zoning.
Shanta,
I went advantageous with this one just because I know that area very well, and traffic is going to be even more of a nightmare with 12 units.
okay, Leslie,
Highly advantageous, it meets the unit count.
Dawn,
Highly advantageous number of units and zoning.
Bernie,
Highly advantageous, the number of units in accordance with the RFP and bylaws.
Abby,
highly advantageous, the number of units and meets zoning. And though I appreciate Shanta's point, hopefully everybody will take the bus, that it's free.
highly advantageous because it did propose no more than 12 units, and the proposal was in accordance with the rental development zoning bylaw. Site design. So the criterion in the site design were thoughtful and efficient site design, minimizing impervious surfaces, uses standards of low impact development, underground utilities, exterior lighting, minimal impact to neighbors, buffer to neighboring properties, stormwater management, landscape plan, including parking area designated for snow, adequate screened visitor parking, central trash and recycling area appropriately screened, and specific to 135 and 137 Orange was a bus pull-off area and shelter. This was specific only to 135 and 137 Orange Street. So, Bernie,
I said highly advantageous. I thought the proposals was well designed, reflects a substantial level of effort at this stage to meet the requirements in the RFP, including the landscaping plan, exterior lighting, stormwater management, impervious surfaces, low impact development, underground utilities, saving the large tree on the site, the bus pull-off area and shelter. I did say that in my mind, and I am not a full-time or summer resident of Nantucket, so others know better than me. I thought it was a bit of a negative that there were 28 parking spaces for Orange Street. Might be insufficient for 28 units plus the management office plus delivery and maintenance trucks. But I'm not the best person to make that decision. I still thought it was highly advantageous.
Shanta,
I think the designs are beautifully done, very thoughtfully done. Placement of the buildings are wonderful. So that's highly advantageous for me. And of course, didn't think about parking.
Tracy,
I said highly advantageous, that met all the criteria, adds interior mail rooms, temperature controlled storage, and in some cases, EV charging stations, saves the tree at orange, and incorporates appropriate screening for abutters.
Perfect. Dawn?
Highly advantageous. I don't have anything to add.
Abby?
Same as Don, highly advantageous, and I agree. I don't have anything new to add.
Okay. Leslie?
Highly advantageous. I thought the plans were well developed for building and parking placement, landscaping, utilities, and open spaces.
Rick?
Highly advantageous. I'm grateful for some of the elaboration that the team gave today to so that we can understand things like attention to landscaping and respecting adjacent properties.
Perfect. Okay. Christy?
Highly advantageous. I felt that they kept building with Nantucket in mind and had very thoughtful and efficient site design. And I appreciated the bus pull off and shelter area at 135 and 137 Orange.
I also had it as highly advantageous. I did think that they did took a very thoughtful approach to how they designed everything, trying to minimize impacts to the neighbors. And I was glad to see the bus pull off included in the design and saving the tree as well. So, okay. Sustainability criterion to be measured on were energy efficient design and elevation level with coastal resiliency in mind. So, Chantal.
I rated that as highly advantageous. I appreciated the use of solar on the projects, protection of existing trees, and maintaining those green spaces. And then I had a comment about the public transportation, Abby, about the public transportation, ensuring that they're near bus routes, that buses have pull-off areas to minimize use of cars.
Rick.
Highly advantageous. I too appreciated the solar and the green spaces.
Tracy.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. I went with advantageous. And I had some concerns around, get all my things open properly. Sorry. I'm scrolling. I've lost my spot. Oh, so I said it contains some mitigation for coastal resilience via landscaping and drainage. The designs meet the stretch code, but I would not define it as exceeding it. That's it.
Thank you. Leslie?
I gave this one advantageous. I thought the green spaces and the solar were done well, but I don't believe that they committed to a net zero energy efficiency. So if they have, I'll change it to highly advantageous, but I think I asked the question the last time and there was not a commitment that it was going to be net zero.
Bernie?
I had this as advantageous. I thought it reflected, again, a significant effort to meet the sustainability and energy efficiency goals and the stretch code. Although I also thought the achieving net zero is only a goal. It's not included as achievement. And it did incorporate the ground flood storm water mitigation, the coastal resilience plan and strategies, but I was less certain that it would be categorized as above and beyond, kind of what Leslie said, without more specific details. There was a few things that really details that would, maybe change that to me about raised HVAC equipment. And I didn't expect to see that level of detail out here, but I think it's just uncertain. It's still advantageous.
Okay. Dawn?
I rated it as highly advantageous.
Okay.
I thought that they did a good job.
Abby?
I did advantageous as well for the same reasons, and like Leslie and others, I didn't see a specific net zero goal, but that was just my 2 cents.
Okay. Christie?
Rated as highly advantageous and that the buildings would be compliant with the stretch code, all electric and passive house aligned.
Okay. I added advantageous too, for the reason I had difficulty determining whether or not it got to net zero or not in the proposals. And like Leslie, if affirmative wanted to submit additional comments or information about that, I would revisit the my ranking. But given the difficulty in figuring out whether it was going to be net zero or not, I felt advantageous was appropriate. Building design. The criteria is exterior design and materials is of high quality while remaining compatible with local historical design, including the use of historic colors. Creative design that is cost effective and high quality. Interior layouts meet a variety of family type needs. Finishes support durability and low maintenance for the tenant. Management office on site with storage and adequate tenant dry temperature controlled storage. I would note Rick did have to run to a meeting, and this is being recorded, so he will be able to see the rest of this, and he will be prepared at the meeting to make the ultimate recommendation to go through the remainder of his rankings and discuss them with the committee as well. So I just want to note that for the committee. And since when I looked up, I saw you first, Shanta, I'll give you the honor of going first on this ranking.
I went advantageous with this one. You know, they're clearly knowledgeable about what the requirements are for building on the island, and clearly displayed that in their proposals. And
Tracy?
I just want to add, I love a building with storage. So appreciate that you guys did that.
Tracy?
I went with highly advantageous. It meets the criteria. There's a good balance of quality, efficiency, and interior designs.
Perfect. Rick is gone. Dawn?
I don't have the floor plans in front of me right now, but I had done this as advantageous because I
Okay.
noted that I had some concerns with bathrooms and with basements
Okay.
or lack thereof.
Bernie?
I had this as advantageous. I thought the design was very attractive. It did reflect the historical, the present surrounding Nantucket design, and focuses very strongly on energy efficiency. Climate controlled storage is included. Interior layouts address a variety of household needs. As for cost effective, I just felt it was very difficult to say yes at this point. The reality is costs are high. And I suspect that by the time we get to starting construction, costs will be higher than shown without changes. So it's just a little too early in the process to know those details. I mentioned this, I think, the last time with the first one, and we did have a brief discussion about it, about some further exploration and explanation of panelized or modular construction to save costs and time. I also, for the use of interior space, I thought it was mostly good. This might address the bathroom issue. The 3-bedroom units showed 1.5 baths. Today's market, I think certainly you see 3 bedrooms with 1.5 baths. 3-2 is more common, especially for higher income housing, like the workforce would be. Tacoma Green has 3 bedrooms, 2 bath units. And there are a few other minor sort of things, but again, advantageous.
Yeah. Christie?
I rated this as highly advantageous, and the plans meet the criteria of utilizing high quality materials without creating a cost burden. All sites have a plan for on-site temperature controlled storage.
Okay. Leslie?
I rated this highly advantageous. The design of structures appears to be consistent with HDC standards, and the amenities provided are energy efficient, and the layouts have a mix of bedroom counts.
Perfect. Thank you. Abby?
I did advantageous for, I think a lot of the same reasons Bernie said. I just agree that I didn't necessarily think it was as cost effective, so that would bump it up if it was, but I didn't think it.
Okay.
And I
Um,
thought the storage could be better, sorry.
No, that's fine. I rated it advantageous as well. I think it certainly reflected the local historical design. I think the layouts were good, but I think it was also a little bit of a challenge to make a determination that the design is cost effective. I have no doubt that the work that they'll do is probably high quality, but I didn't have enough in the proposal to get to highly advantageous, so. Okay, financial feasibility. Adequacy of proposed budgets, both development and operating, appropriateness of rents in relation to market, track record of securing proposed conventional and subsidy financing, and no project subsidy from the town except for the contribution of land. So Bernie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, it was either you or I, so you go first.
You know, I'm a tough mark on this. You know,
I
I'm
know.
not actually a developer, so I don't have to do any of this thing. So this is the only thing I know anything about. No, I rated this as not advantageous. So I rated it as a fail because I thought not advantageous went along with a fail. If that's incorrect, that might be something I would consider to change.
I think everything is a pass, and then we enter in the comments just because of the way the OpenGov system works. So you
Okay.
read it as a pass,
Okay.
and then you just put in the comment not advantageous and your rationale why.
Got it. Okay, well then I rate it as a pass because I think it's not particularly advantageous at this time, and it could be advantageous with some discussion, which I think is how these things get done. You have to have conversations with your partner. I believe the development team has demonstrated very strong understanding of costs, budgets, financing programs for affordable housing in Massachusetts. They know this stuff. I did feel that the 11.8 deeply subordinated loan requested from the town in dollar terms and the percentage of TDC, it's 26%, is high. It does not include the amount of interest the town will incur over time paying off the borrowing, and that would be substantial, many millions of dollars more. We've run those numbers in Tacoma Green, and it adds a lot to the ultimate amount of dollars the town spends. So the amount and length of time for repayment is going to be burdensome for the town, although it might be worth it, and that's a decision. There's minimal cash flow after expenses for debt service, making it difficult for the town to receive its money back. I had a few other more minor things, and we talked the last time about the first one and the workforce housing subsidy mass housing presently has. Obviously, we hope it's going to be there. We're going to be dependent on that to make it work. It's an important subsidy in addition to the low-income housing tax credits.
Okay. I rated it as advantageous. I think what they put in there from a development and operating budget is pretty realistic based on what I've seen in some of the other ones that we've reviewed. It's a rather large subsidy request within the RFP proposal. I certainly understand that most affordable housing developments on the island likely would need some type of subsidy. But Bernie makes a really good point. When we look at this, it isn't really just the 11 million in cost to construct. It's the delta, it's the additional cost of probably $5 or $6 million, maybe $7 million in interest that, depending on what rate the town borrows at, that is on top of that. That's a cost borne by the taxpayers in this project. But from a pure standpoint of looking at the 11 million, it still falls within the 20 to 30% range of the total. So I rated it as advantageous. Christy?
I rated it as advantageous for similar reasons. I felt that they had realistic development and operating budgets, but not advantageous for the request of additional subsidy from the town. I did feel that they have a highly advantageous for securing other funding sources and would hope that the amount requested by the town could be reduced. And then just hearing Bernie talk about that, I think that is important to think about what the other costs to the town are, and hopefully thinking about the first bid that we got for Orange Street was ultimately declined because it didn't pass bond council. And so making sure that whatever structure we come up with is feasible in terms of getting Hilltop's and bond council's approval.
All great points. Chantal?
I rated this as advantageous because I thought their proposal showed a clear understanding of development and operating budget, and didn't go highly advantageous because I'm not a finance person. So whether or not it makes sense is for you to tell me, Brian.
Okay. Tracy?
Some of the requirements and the criteria, but I'm mindful of Bernie's comments and Christie's comments, and I think that for that reason, I can't go highly advantageous, but I don't think it's not advantageous. So I'm going with just advantageous.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. Dawn?
Advantageous because, for many of the reasons stated, and not highly advantageous because of the subsidy specifically.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Abby?
I also rated it advantageous for all the same reasons as everyone else, but I mean, the main thing was that 26% kind of puts it in that category.
Leslie?
Same as Abby.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we're down to the last one, I think, because we will need Rick for the overall rating, but for references and site visits. References a minimum of 3 municipal references, including references from all projects undertaken in the last 10 years. Site visits, we may choose to visit a proposer's completed project. I don't think we've had that discussion, and I'm not sure as a committee that we think it's necessary to do. At least from my opinion, I don't know that we need to do a site visit. I think the proposal speaks for itself and is enough, but if the committee wants to do that, we can have that we can rank this and then decide if we want to have a site visit and reconsider it, I guess, is the way that I would suggest this. Christy?
I did highly advantageous. The references and testimonies illustrate the ability of affirmative investments to construct units timely and under budget.
Chantal?
This was highly advantageous for me for the very same reasons Christy said.
Tracy?
So with really advantageous, although it would be difficult to visit other project examples, but because they're located off island.
Leslie?
Highly advantageous. All the references for the prior project seem very strong.
Dawn?
The same, highly advantageous for all the reasons that have been stated.
Bernie?
I also said highly advantageous. There were the 3 municipal references, and they were the people in positions that we would want to verify the developer's involvement. And I knew at least 2 that I think, but I did not contact anyone. Anyway, that's pretty much. I wasn't
Abby?
in the properties.
I also said highly advantageous for all the same reasons. I happened to be on the vineyard and drove by one of them, and it looked very nice. So it wasn't an official site visit, but I did see it and it looked great. And I did hear good testimony from my friends who also live on the vineyard. So
I had it highly advantageous, and they certainly had an impressive reference list and a deep roster of good references for all of the majority of the entire project team. So I certainly think that it met the criteria for highly advantageous. So in order to do, so I'm going to assume that that means we don't feel that we need to try and undertake a site visit, right? I mean, I trust Abby's observation from her drive-by, so at least I do, and hopefully the rest of the committee does as well.
I also attended, went to the vineyard, so we have two.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yes, okay, good. So that being said, we do need Rick to watch the rest of this for the additional comments and finalize his ratings, which at the next meeting he can do. And then we can have a discussion on both projects' overall composite rating and come to a decision on which proposal we would like to recommend. We also probably, I think, have the option to recommend that both proposals go to the Affordable Housing Trust ultimately for a decision on which path they would like to go down. That is certainly an option as well. Or Christie, in your conversation with the trust between now and then, if you get some feedback. Abby, your feedback actually as a member was very valuable, and as well, if we get some feedback that may be able to inform our decision and make this a little easier in terms of recommendation, but that would be the way that I would suggest this, and hopefully we could have that meeting in the next 7 to 10 days, depending on everybody's schedule, so we can wrap this up, make the recommendation to the trust, and then they can ultimately decide what they would like to do. And hopefully we could start working on proposals for the trust to work with affirmative on if that's the direction that they go in. Does that make sense to everybody on the evaluation committee first?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Brian. And so we have a meeting next Tuesday, which obviously too soon, but if you want to aim, Chris, are we still having the meeting on the 19th?
The 19th is our next meeting. We don't-
Okay, so I think if we aim for that, that might be good timing.
Okay, so then we could have a meeting like on the 20th. I'll send around and do a poll to everybody, or Christy will, to confirm. Craig, does that sound, timeline wise, does that work for you guys too? I know this has been a little bit of a slow process, but we really want to get it right with this because it's 3 high profile areas that the trust acquired for property. And it's important, I think, not only to the group, but the recommendation that goes to the Affordable Housing Trust has had a lot of thought put into it so that they can make that decision ultimately.
Yeah, that works for us. Obviously the longer this goes, the tighter it is for us to try and sneak into this 2026 winter round. But at the end of the day, making sure you guys get through your process, dot your I's, cross your T's, and are thorough, and just, in my opinion, sets the whole project up for a greater success. So happy to go along with your schedule.
Okay.
So Brian, the trust originally wasn't going to have a meeting on Tuesday. If it would help, we could have a meeting this could be the only agenda item.
It would help if it's possible, Christy, it would help to be able to kind of just get their feedback on, not go into depth on it, but get their feedback on what direction they think is a priority. And then we could have the next meeting with the group and the evaluation committee and finalize this a little bit sooner, which I think, because as we all know, if the trust does make a recommendation for one of these proposals, there's going to be probably back and forth, and depending on how for like a land development agreement, which is included, and there's still some other things that have to kind of be finalized along the way if they were to recommend one or the other direction. So the sooner we could do it, I think it keeps everything on track for the trust, but also for you and I and Tracy and everybody else on the town side that's going to be working through the rest of that process.
Okay. And then would this committee then meet on Wednesday or Thursday of next week?
Yeah, we could send it if I guess we can do it now. What does everybody's schedule look like for next week, or Wednesday or Thursday? Could people meet on one of the days on the evaluation committee?
Thursday's better for me, but I could do either day.
Same time, Thursday at 10?
Yeah,
Right.
it would
yeah.
work for me too.
We have
Actually,
exec-
yes, Thursday at 10 works for me.
Okay, so
We-
why don't we just, is that work for everybody?
No, we have executive session.
Okay,
Oh,
we'll make executive session fast.
Well, I couldn't do anything until after 2.
Okay,
We have some important stuff on executive session. I could do Wednesday before the agenda meeting.
Is 11 o'clock on Wednesday work for everybody?
I can do that.
I can do that.
I can do that too.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, look at that, Christy.
Okay, good. Okay, so Craig, as you heard that Wednesday, we'll warn and post a meeting for Wednesday, and the goal at that meeting for everybody, evaluation committee and affirmative, would be to go through the finalization of Rick's rankings after he's watched this recording, come to composite ratings for evaluation 1, or I'm sorry, proposal 1 and 2. So please, everybody, maybe go back and refamiliarize yourself with proposal 1 and what your rankings were, and have a discussion. We can have a fulsome discussion on the 2 to come to overall rankings and decide which proposal or both proposals we would like to write up and send to affordable housing for their consideration to move this forward.
And
Before, go ahead.
just to make sure you would like affirmative to be on that at 11 a.m. on Wednesday?
It's a publicly posted meeting, which you're more than welcome to attend, as we have to have these discussions in an open posted meeting, so.
We'll be there.
Okay. Can you send any information, whoever's scheduling it, to Tara? I'm going to be on vacation next week.
Okay,
And hopefully
no.
not checking email regularly.
we will. I'll make sure to include Tara and the notification for the posting and the agenda so that she has it. Before we end, David, Craig, Virginia, Tara, I certainly want to say thank you. Not only for submitting the proposals, but for putting the presentation together today. I actually think it was informative and helpful to see it and to hear from you guys on how you went about putting it together. I know it's primarily similar between the 2 projects, with the exception of the financing mechanisms and methodologies, but I don't want to speak for the entire group, but I certainly appreciate the effort and everything that you put into to get that ready for today and taking us through it. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. We'll send it to you too, in case anybody wants to see any of those charts.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
With that, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
Okay.
Second.
So all in favor via roll call: Dawn Hill,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Ernie Husser,
Aye.
Tracy McDonald. I'm going to assume Tracy said yes.
Oh, sorry, my internet's terrible. Aye.
All right. Amy B. Molina,
Aye.
Leslie Snell,
Aye.
Chantal,
Aye.
and Brian Turbot is an aye. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week, and we'll make sure that gets warned, and I'll send it to you, Tara. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.